Whitmore Hall, the stately mansion in the heart of elegant Kensington, shone tonight like a beacon in the middle of London. On the artificial lake at its gates, strings of lights shimmered into 1,000 reflections, while inside the grand hall, the sound of strings intertwined with the lively laughter of the elite. The air was perfumed with white roses flown in from Holland, laced with the fragrance of fine champagne. Tonight was supposed to be the happiest night of Amara Sterling's life, her 28th birthday, and the celebration of 3 years of marriage to Edward Whitmore, eldest son of the prestigious Whitmore family. The hostess entered the hall in a crimson evening gown, its delicate cut tracing the lines of her tall frame, her natural curls swept into an elegant bun that revealed her radiant face. All eyes turned toward her, a woman of color shining amidst the conservative white aristocracy, an image at once proud and defiant. Amara smiled, yet in her eyes lingered a shadow of thought. Outsiders only saw the glory, the immigrant girl who, through grit and intellect, had risen to become the wife of a pharmaceutical prince. But Amara alone knew. The marriage had been far from sweet. Edward was handsome and successful, yet cold and calculating. He paraded her as a symbol of diversity for the press, rather than valuing her as a partner. Still, Amara carried herself with composure. She greeted all guests, from politicians to hospital directors, from international investors to society journalists. 28 candles burned bright on the birthday cake at the center of the table, a testament to a youth still brimming with strength. Her gaze swept the room. Edward had not yet appeared. She was accustomed to his lateness, whether due to work or his penchant for dramatic entrances. But tonight, a faint unease stirred in her chest. The great doors swung open with a resounding echo. The crowd turned. Edward Whitmore strode in, tall with perfectly groomed hair, clad in a bespoke suit. In his arms, neither bouquet nor gift, a newborn swaddled in a luxurious pink blanket. Gasps rippled through the hall. Some covered their mouths, others whispered behind their hands. Following Edward was Sophia Marlowe, a model and notorious confidant of scandal-ridden celebrities. She wore a silver gown, one Amara recognized instantly. It had once hung in her own wardrobe, purchased for an event she never attended. The air froze. Amara remained still, eyes widened, lips curling into a cold smile. Edward stopped in the center, raising the baby high like a Roman emperor presenting his heir. His voice carried across the hall, "Happy birthday, Amara. And tonight, I choose to stop living a lie. This is my daughter, 3 months old, the fruit of my love with Sophia. I have prepared the divorce papers, and I thought it only fitting elegant, even to make this announcement before those who matter most." A murmur spread like waves. Some women gripped their glasses tight. A few men frowned awkwardly. At the front table, Amara's mother froze, hand on her pearl necklace, while Margaret, Edward's mother, snatched up her phone, no doubt dialing the family lawyer. Amara drew in a deep breath. In that moment, she saw clearly every face turned toward her. Pity, curiosity, and a few eyes hungry for the downfall of the outsider bride. But instead of weeping or raging, Amara plucked a fresh glass of champagne from a waiter's tray and took a slow sip. Every cell in her body burned, yet her mask of calm held. "How fascinating," she said, her voice steady, carrying just enough to reach every ear. "Edward, you certainly have a flair for drama. But the most important thing in theater isn't the props, it's the truth." The hall fell silent. Edward frowned, caught off guard by her composure. Behind him, Sophia's crimson lips paled, her arms tightening around the infant. Amara stepped forward, her heels striking the marble floor like a clock ticking. From her clutch, she drew a thick envelope. "Before you continue your little performance," she said, holding it aloft, "perhaps everyone should see Street Mary's fertility clinic records. These are Edward's own medical files, from 18 months ago when he insisted we try for a child." Edward blanched. Some guests exchanged horrified looks. Amara opened the envelope, pulled out several papers stamped in red, and handed them to the nearest journalist. "The diagnosis is clear. Azoospermia, complete infertility. 3 consecutive tests. In other words, Edward Whitmore has been unable to father a child since his polo accident at university. This baby," her eyes flicked to Sophia, Then to Henry seated in the crowd, "Cannot possibly be his." An uproar exploded. Some guests muttered, "My God," and others shook their heads in disbelief. Cameras flashed furiously. Edward stood frozen, hands trembling, nearly dropping the child. Sophia's face drained of blood. Henry Edward's younger brother turned away, but his panic was plain to all. Amara pressed on. She laid the medical files on the grand table, then drew out a worn brown leather journal. "Edward," she declared, her voice rising, "did you think I was just a decorative rose? Unfortunately for you, I also keep a diary." She opened it and read aloud. Dates, locations, lovers' names, hotel receipts, extravagant gifts. With each name spoken, the crowd buzzed louder. By the 17th, the air was so heavy it seemed the ceiling might collapse. "And all of it," she concluded, "paid from our joint account, a direct violation of our prenup. According to the contract, you forfeit everything." Edward shouted hoarsely, "Lies!" But his voice broke, stripped of power. The baby wailed, sensing the storm. Amara tilted her head, eyes on the child, then squarely at Henry. The little girl's eyes, blue laced with gold, were a flawless mirror of Henry's own. A hush swept the hall. Guests whispered. Some exhaled bitterly. Amara smiled, snapping the diary shut. "You see," she said, "the best theatre is when no one expects the ending." She set her champagne glass down and walked to the untouched cake. 28 candles still burned bright. With one breath, she blew them all out. "When I wished," she said softly, yet her voice carried. The wish came true. Edward himself revealed to the world who he truly island. The hall erupted in applause, not the polite, mocking claps that had greeted Edward's confession, but a thunderous ovation of respect, release, even admiration. Amara straightened, turned, and strode out of Whitmore Hall. Behind her, an empire had begun to crack. The London night draped thin strands of mist over Mayfair's streets, as if someone had tried on a bridal veil across the sky and forgotten to take it down. Amara Sterling stepped out of the sleek black car, her heels brushing the grey stone before the entrance of the building where she owned a penthouse, registered under a trust fund months ago. The guards bowed, their eyes carrying that quiet respect she had earned with her unsettling habits. Never late, never a trembling hand, and never a tear shed before strangers. The elevator doors closed, pulling her away from the city's chill and breath. Numbers flickered upward to 28, the same as her age, a congratulation and a blade. Entering her home, she switched on the lights. Warm brightness spilled over the high ceiling, slid across the glass wall that opened onto Mayfair's sky, and fell on the sand-colored sofa and the walnut desk tidy to the point of inhuman precision. On the desk lay the brown leather journal she had brandished tonight, an indictment in the den of society's beasts. Beside it, her phone pulsed with endless notifications. Headlines, messages, missed calls. Whitmore heir, humiliated at wife's birthday gala. Infertility exposed. Shocking revelation at Whitmore Hall. Mayfair princess or tycoon menace. Each title is a small, eager blade. Amara ignored them. She poured water, leaning against the kitchen counter, gazing down at London. Streets murmuring, windows glowing amber squares, the night sky holding a long breath. A thought flickered. Half an hour ago, she had blown out 28 candles, and now, another flame inside her chest was relit, not the light of wishes, but the fire of a campaign. The door opened, and Clara Bennett swept in like a gust of orderly wind, hair tied, beige trench coat, laptop tucked under one arm. "Never seen a party like that," Clara said, slipping off her coat, her eyes darting across the room before settling on Amara's disconcertingly calm face. "You all right?" "Better than all right," Amara replied, setting down her glass. "You brought everything?" Clara nodded, placing the laptop on the desk and pulling out a bundle of black USB drives, each labeled. Suspicious transfers, shell companies, invoices for consultants who never consulted. And this, she held up one, is a copy of internal exchanges from Whitmore Biomedica about the Nigerian vaccine batch. Not everything, but enough for a frame. Courtesy of one administrative assistant, fed up with a boss who sees Africans as profit margins. Her face was worn from sleeplessness, but her eyes gleamed sharp as surgical lamps. "Sorry, I only caught part of the gala live stream. The signal was weak. But I did record the room audio when you said, azoospermia." Amara laughed lightly, without bitterness. "The sound of recognition," she said. A whole room realizing that handsome power can still be powerless. She gestured to a chair. "Sit. We have 6 hours." By morning, the battlefield moves. Clara opened the laptop, windows blooming like eyes. "The plan?" "Step 1, Amara counted. "Secure the perimeter. Assets, contacts, witnesses. Step 2, shape the narrative. Not the vengeful wife, that's cheap, but the moral guardian of pharmaceuticals. Step 3, lock every legal backdoor so Edward can't fake bankruptcy, move assets, or erase server logs. Step 4, she looked out at the mist beading on the glass. Step 4 is what you and I promised 2 years ago. Turn pain into policy. The next morning, London woke beneath a sheet of pearly grey clouds pressed low on the rooftops, the scent of rain mingling with the hiss of bus brakes. Amara rose before dawn and brewed coffee in the kettle her grandmother Helena had left her, its metal tarnished like memory, yet the water still poured hot and clean. She stood by the window, staring at the sky stretched like a damp cloth over the city. She wondered why London always chose this colour. London always chose this colour on days of significant decisions to remind us that every splendour needs a muted ground to shine against. On the table lay the brown leather journal, the journal of betrayal, neat, worn at the corners, its spine creased by hands. Inside, pages marked with slips of paper, 12 thirds, Geneva, 1740, room 804, 24 fifths, Soho, wine bill, joint card, 7/9, Tokyo, meeting lasting 72 hours. Each line was a needle stitching together what Edward once believed were scattered fragments. An affair, a business trip, a fatigue. With the patience of someone who had chosen not to drown, Amara had sewn them into a net. She texted Clara, 8. Mayfair conference room, bring everything. The reply came instantly. Already in a taxi. Double coffee? Double. And no sugar. Amara sent, smiling faintly. Sugar is sweet, Helena once said, but justice is not. At 5 to 8, the bell rang. Clara entered in a grey turtleneck, dragging a small suitcase. She placed it on the table, eyes catching on the leather journal. Today, she said, as if to herself, is the day we turn a diary into architecture. Not just architecture, Amara answered, flipping the book open, her hand habitually steadying the edge, load-bearing structure. So when they strike, it doesn't break. They Saturday, Clara unzipped the case. Dozens of clear envelopes, each holding documents, hotel invoices, credit card statements, ride bookings, jewelry receipts, even text messages Edward foolishly sent from his company phone because the signal was better, a reason both laughable and infuriating. Clara sorted time, place, transaction, subject. Amara read through the names, pausing longer at number 12, then number 8 anonymous figures whose traces of indulgence had been etched into the joint account. We don't humiliate women, she reminded herself again. We only follow the money. A sentence she had rehearsed, knowing the tabloids would salivate over the other women, their dresses, their lipstick, but the surface was only surface. The money flow was the director. Clara nodded. I'll use initials and blur faces in the public versions. The full files go only to the court and investigators. She pulled out a bill, a platinum necklace, 12 diamonds, Bond Street, signed Edward, noted as partner gift. The sum was so large that a nurse in Croydon would have to work 14 months to afford it if she were foolish enough to try. Amara stared at the figure, and with it came the faces of those she had vowed to speak for. The gaunt man in Brixton's clinic waiting room, his hands blackened by construction and trembling with hypoglycemia. The nursing student who once messaged, I bought medicine for my patient because she was denied it. I'll pay in installments. Financial debt could be negotiated. Moral debt could not. By 9, Clara's independent legal team arrived. Maya Desai, a sharp-eyed lawyer with a voice precise as steel, Hugo Lin, forensic accountant, and Aisha Mbaye, once of a major bank's fraud division, now freelance. An Indian, a Chinese, a West African, three rivers converging at Amara's table, forming a current not easily dammed. We pursue two paths, Maya began, flipping open her notes. 1. Prove breach of prenup and misuse of marital assets to request interim freezing orders. 2. Build corporate misconduct personal expenses disguised as business, in case regulators step in. And a third path, Amara added, is ethics. I want our argument in court framed around public trust. I'm not punishing Edward for infidelity. I'm punishing him for treating trust as raw material to be melted into jewelry. Hugo projected a timeline. We've cross-matched. Each journal entry has a paired proof. Booking, card swipe, ride, garage camera, text, cell tower. The hardest part is choosing fewer exhibits so the court isn't overwhelmed. He clicked. Tokyo, New Otani Hotel. 3 nights. Perfect overlap with memos on Japanese expansion. But wine and spa bills weren't filed under business costs. They slip through because middle managers assume the boss has ways. Their mistake, our leverage. And the child? Aisha asked, low, like touching a blade. When will you raise paternity? When needed. Not before, Amara said slowly. She recalled the child's eyes blue, streaked with gold, like lightning trapped in C and Henry's. I will not let a baby be Exhibit A, but I'll answer truthfully if Henry wields her as a threat. Maya studied her, a flicker of rare respect crossing her face. Understood. She returned to the notes. Today, we file for interim freezing at the family division, citing breach of prenup by adultery, risk of asset flight, and public interest since funds appear drawn from company accounts. We also notify banks, brokers, and asset managers that unusual transfers are contempt of court. And a phone buzzed. Clara glanced, then handed it to Amara. A message from Sophia. I'm at the lawyer's. I'll sign the affidavit. I have photos of Henry at the flat he rents with shell company money. I'm sorry. Attached was a photo. Henry asleep, shadowed, a stack of invoices on the table, and an envelope stamped with Silver Quay Holdings, a name. Hugo instantly recognized as a smokescreen. We don't need her apology, Amara murmured. We need her truth. She typed quickly. Sign. My lawyer will shield you. The child will be protected more than you imagine. That day, the London sky hung heavy, layers of cloud drawn like curtains waiting for a storm to break. Inside Whitmore Hall, the glow of crystal chandeliers was not enough to disguise the tension, taut as a violin string. After the Scandalous birthday night, many guests lingered, partly from curiosity, partly because they knew the play was not yet over. Amara Sterling re-entered the hall, her stride straight, her face composed to the point no one could guess what she was about to unleash. Henry Whitmore sat collapsed near the window, twisting a napkin to shreds. Behind him, Sophia Marlowe held the infant girl, 3 months old, her blue eyes flecked with gold, gazing innocently around, unaware that the fate of a dynasty hung above her. Edward sat at the head of the chair, face flushed, breath ragged. Amara advanced to the center of the room. Her voice rang out, clear and even. Edward, you claim this child is yours, do you not? Edward straightened, trying to recover the drama of a wronged housemaster. Yes, and you will never be able to deny it. A faint smile touched Amara's lips. I am not denying it. I am redefining it. She turned to Henry, her gaze piercing like a needle. Henry, look closely at the child. That golden streak in her iris is a hereditary trait carried by only one member of the Whitmore family. And that person is you. The room froze. A tremulous whisper rose from the end of the table. My God, it's Henry. Instantly, every eye turned to the younger brother. Henry opened his mouth to protest, but his gaze fell on the baby's face. The resemblance was undeniable. His lips trembled, his fists clenched the ruined napkin, then dropped open in defeat. Edward roared, voice breaking. You! "Henry, how dare you betray me?" Henry sprang to his feet, face burning. "Yes, I love Sophia. I couldn't stand watching you treat her like a toy." Edward lunged, fist raised, but Amara stepped between them, hand lifted. Her voice, not loud, cracked like thunder. "Enough. Everyone here has seen the truth. This is no longer a private tragedy. This is the public collapse of the Whitmore family." At that instant, the great doors burst open. Tipped off by Clara Bennett, reporters surged inside, flashes exploding like lightning. Questions pelted down like hailstones. "Amara, will you file for divorce? Edward, how do you respond to rumors of infertility? Sophia, who is the child's real father?" Margaret Whitmore, the matriarch, sank into her chair, hands trembling. The aristocratic mask she had worn for decades cracked apart before the cameras. Amara walked to the table where last night's cake still stood. From her clutch, she drew a sealed envelope and held it high. "I dislike speculation. Here is the result of an independent medical test, with Sophia's consent, this morning. It confirms that Henry Whitmore is the biological father of the child." Sophia broke down sobbing, clutching the baby. Henry staggered, face drained white. Edward screamed, howling like a beast cornered. The crowd erupted, the hall buzzing like a storm had finally struck. Amara fixed Edward with a steady gaze. "You thought to wield a child as a weapon to humiliate me, but truth is like lightning, it does not choose its ground. And tonight, it has struck you. You betrayed not only your marriage, you staged a play with the blood of your own brother." The room splintered into chaos. Some guests fled, unwilling to be ensnared in scandal. Others raised their cameras high, live-streaming the collapse of a dynasty. Edward thrashed forward amid the flash and storm, but security held him fast. "You've destroyed me, Amara. I'll sue you," he bellowed. Her eyes met his, voice calm and merciless. "I don't need to destroy you. You destroy yourself." Henry collapsed into a chair, mumbling hollow apologies. Sophia said nothing, only wept into the baby's hair. Finally, Margaret rose, her voice hoarse yet clear. "Enough. You have turned the Whitmores into a farce. Amara, go. As for me, I must choose a side." Her words cut like the final blade. The Whitmores, once the untouchable emblem of London power, now lay shattered before the public. Amara drew a deep breath and glanced at Clara by the door, her phone still recording. "You got it all?" Clara nodded, pride sparking in her eyes. Every second, Amara tightened her clutch, turned, and walked from the hall. Outside, the sky answered like a theater. Thunder cracked, rain poured. Water drenched her skin, but she carried no umbrella. Reporters swarmed, flashes firing like lightning across the courtyard. She paused just before entering her car and turned to face them, her voice cut through rain and thunder. "Write it true. This is not the story of a jealous wife. This is the story of power, lies, and the price paid. And I will return." She stepped into the car, and the door shut. The engine roared, and the vehicle sliced through rain, leaving behind Whitmore Hall trembling in the storm and a dynasty officially undone. In silence, Amara leaned back in her seat and whispered to herself, "Grandmother, I have sown the seed. Now let the storm water it." The night after the storm at Whitmore Hall, London awoke to a steady drizzle, streets soaked and glimmering with fractured reflections of yellow lamps. In a Ritz hotel suite, Edward Whitmore sat alone, shirt unbuttoned, fabric crumpled, a glass of whiskey sloshing in his hand. The pale glow of his phone screen lit a face hollowed in just one night. 12 hours earlier, he had believed he controlled it all: his wife, his mistress, his company, his image before society. Now his phone overflowed with missed calls and endless messages from lawyers, from his mother, from the board, from reporters demanding answers about the DNA test, the baby, the infertility. Each notification was another blade slicing into the proud armor he had built over a decade. He opened the news feed, scrolling. Every outlet carried the same headline: Whitmore scandal, the brother's child, or the heirs. One editorial sneered: "An empire forged in steel, undone by DNA." Edward hurled the phone onto the carpet. It bounced once, then lay silent, mocking him. He gripped his head, gasping. Through the rain against the window, he imagined someone knocking at the door of his fate, patient, merciless. While Edward drowned in liquor and disgrace, across the city, Amara Sterling sat in her penthouse, clear-eyed, as if untouched by last night's storm. Before her, Clara Bennett spread documents across the table, numbers, transactions, evidence. Amara ignored the whiskey and the headlines. She studied a map pinned to the wall, red markers stabbed into every place Edward had squandered money and honor. "You know," Clara said, eyes fixed on her laptop, "the board is in chaos. Half are calling Davidson, the old shareholder, kingmaker for guidance. The rest stay silent, waiting to see who wins." "That's survival instinct," Amara replied, her voice flat as steel. "When the ship tilts, they don't rescue the drowning. They wait to see which raft floats first." She rose, walked to the window. London glittered like a maze from her high floor, but to her eyes it was a chessboard, each square waiting to move. "We won't let them choose rafts. We'll build a bridge, and they'll cross it if they want to survive." Clara looked up. "You mean restructure everything?" Amara nodded. "Not just the company. The entire system they lean on. Edward thought he humiliated me before 63 witnesses. What he doesn't realize is he handed me an audience." Meanwhile, Margaret Whitmore sat alone in the study in the family's Kensington estate. Before her lay an old folder she had hidden for decades, notes of Elizabeth Errol, the founder, who once dreamed of humanitarian medicine until her own son strangled it. Margaret remembered last night, when Amara spoke the truth before the cameras. At that moment, she saw Elizabeth's younger self, a woman who had never bowed to deceit. Margaret whispered to the empty room, "Perhaps it is time I truly choose a side." Her hand rested on the silver USB she had given Amara the night before. She knew then that her loyalty to the Whitmore dynasty was finished. Sophia Marlowe cradled her baby in a rented flat on the city's edge, eyes fixed on the flood of online comments, curses, pity, even envy of the child of Whitmore blood. Sophia sobbed, but behind her tears glimmered a new resolve. For the first time, she understood that her hollow fame could never raise a child. She typed a message to Amara. "I will cooperate. I will tell everything, but please, protect my daughter." Back at the Ritz, Edward drained his final whiskey, collapsed over the table, muttering, "We'll see, Amara. See if you can fight an empire." But in the blur of alcohol, he knew the empire had already begun to split from within. Outside, distant thunder rolled across the city, a reminder the storm was far from over. The afternoon after the storm, when a pale sun strained through London's heavy clouds, Amara Sterling entered Claridge's lobby. Marble floors gleamed, chandeliers floated overhead, and faint piano notes drifted from the corner. Outside, the press and onlookers pressed close, but within, the air was unnervingly serene. Damien Cross was waiting. He sat alone by the window, clad in a charcoal suit, collar buttoned, impeccable. The waning light slanted through the glass, gilding his angular face, making him look at once like a gentleman and a predator. Amara approached. He rose when he saw her, a thin smile curving his lips. "You came. I knew you wouldn't refuse." "You're too confident," Amara replied, voice steady. "Not confidence," Damien said, pulling out a chair for her. "Probability. I never move without calculating the odds." The waiter brought 2 glasses of mineral water. Damien lifted his, clinking lightly against hers. "To new beginnings." Amara sipped, eyes never leaving his. "So what do you want?" Damien leaned back, twirling the glass. "I want to rebuild Whitmore Biomedica with you. Or rather, to bury the old Whitmore and raise a new empire. Not one built on lies, but on the right formula." His eyes gleamed. The formula Edward's mother once wrote, before her own son betrayed it. Amara arched a brow. "You know about Elizabeth Errol?" "More than you think," Damien replied. He slid a thin folder across the table. Copies of research she once sent to partners in Europe. "I traced them years ago, after my sister nearly died from contaminated insulin Whitmore shipped to Africa. I know half this family's history has been buried." Amara opened the folder. Handwritten formulas filled the pages, neat cursive punctuated with notes. Medicine must reach all people, not just the wealthy. She looked up. Why now? Because you're the first in 10 years to bring down the Whitmore wall, Damien said. You didn't just disgrace Edward. You shook the system. You have the public. You have righteousness. I have capital and networks. Together we could be the blade to carve out the rot of this industry. Amara studied him in silence. Damien carried a dangerous allure. Sharp intellect, polished words, eyes that never let go as if he could strip every secret bare. Yet she knew. Every predator hides claws beneath velvet. How much? She asked flatly. Damien smiled. 20%. Not just for profit. I want a voice in strategy. I am no silent investor. I am an ally. And if I refuse, then Davidson and the decrepit board will rip Whitmore Biomedica apart. Edward may have fallen, but Davidson hasn't. He'll rally the fearful, and you'll be ousted. Alone, Amara. You cannot fight the whole machine. Amara set down her glass, voice slow, deliberate. You're mistaken. I've never been alone. At that moment, Clara entered, laptop open in hand. Sorry to interrupt, but Mr. Cross should know this. We just obtained proof that Davidson is secretly offloading shares to a hedge fund. If he succeeds, the board will swing entirely his way. Damien's smile vanished. Which fund? Clara tapped, turning the screen toward them. Crosswell Capital. Damien let out a dry laugh. Ironic. A branch of my own family. They want to scavenge what's left of Whitmore before I strike. Amara straightened, her gaze sharp as a blade. So now you have two choices. Let your kin feast at this carrion table, or stand with me to sweep it clean. Do you want to be a vulture or a builder? Damien studied her long. Then he extended his hand. A builder. But remember, Amara Sterling building anew means blood on the old foundations. Amara didn't take it immediately. She glanced at Clara, then back at him. At last, her hand clasped his. Firm. We'll rebuild. But the blood spilled will be that of liars, not patients. And in that instant, a new alliance was forged between a betrayed woman unbroken and a predator scarred by the past. Outside, London's sky rumbled with thunder. A new storm had begun. A grey London morning. Rain lashed down as though the city longed to wash away a too excellent stain. In Wandsworth Prison, Edward Whitmore sat behind bars, his face gaunt, eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. The man who once strode across red carpets now hunched in an orange jumpsuit, a newspaper before him blaring the headline, Inquiry expands, Whitmore Biomedica linked to contaminated vaccine scandal. He crushed the paper in his fists, but the truth was not easily crumpled. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. A woman's firm voice rang out. Edward Whitmore, you are remanded further for investigation into the destruction of evidence. The iron door clanged shut with a cold screech. At that moment, Edward understood he was no longer a man of power, but a pawn trapped in the very game he had laid. Elsewhere, Henry Whitmore hid in a rented flat in Shoreditch. The room was damp, the window streaked with rain, and the smell of mold thickened. No longer the playboy scattering money. He was now a pariah scorned by society. His phone buzzed endlessly, threats, curses, and offers from tabloids to sell his story of forbidden love. Henry dragged on a cigarette, hands shaking. He thought of Sophia, of the baby, but knew he had nothing left to hold them with. Then the door burst open. 2 agents entered, warrant in hand, for industrial espionage. Transfers from rival companies into his accounts were irrefutable. Henry froze, the cigarette slipping from his fingers, its ember falling to the tiles like the last spark of a rotting dynasty. Sophia Marlowe clutched her child in a small suburban flat, watching it unfold on the screen. She wept and laughed bitterly at once. All the finery she had dreamed of, the gowns, the flashes, the sweet words had dissolved. Only the baby in her arms remained real. When Amara's message arrived, just 4 words, I will protect you, Sophia sobbed uncontrollably. For the first time, she believed she was no longer a pawn, but a mother. As the Whitmore men fell one by one, Amara Sterling stepped out of the Marble Arch building where she had met with lawyers and Damien Cross. Rain brushed her face, but she felt lighter. Clara Bennett walked beside her, laptop clutched tight. "We have everything," Clara said. Edward destroying evidence, Henry selling secrets, Davidson dumping shares. "This isn't just a divorce, Amara. This is a purge." Amara nodded. "A purge is not for vengeance. It's to clear the soil and plant anew." By late afternoon, Margaret Whitmore called. Her voice was hoarse yet resolute. "I've chosen a side. I will give you every file William and Edward ever hid. Not because I hate them, because I am tired of hiding. Perhaps only you can save what Elizabeth intended." Amara was silent, her vision blurring at the name Elizabeth Errol. In the decay of that dynasty, there was still a faint light, now guiding her forward. Night fell. Screens across London flashed breaking news. Edward Whitmore formally indicted. Henry Whitmore faces 20 years. Whitmore Biomedica under full investigation. The city shook as the once mighty became ridiculed. Amid the storm, Amara stepped onto her penthouse balcony, looking at streets ablaze with light. She knew this was only the beginning. An empire does not crumble with one scandal. It claws, thrashes, and bites back. But this time, Amara was not alone. Clara, Sophia, Margaret, and Damien Cross stood at her side, the predator with shadows, yet walking with her toward a new dawn. In the drifting rain, Amara whispered, "An empire has fallen. A new foundation will rise." And somewhere in the wind, an answer seemed the silent applause of the souls lost to poisoned medicine, now promised justice. At dawn, London seemed freshly washed by the night's rain. Pavements still glistened. Red buses cast long reflections on the wet streets, and commuters wrapped in scarves drifted silently past one another. Workers were unbolting the sign Whitmore Biomedica from a steel glass tower on the south bank. As the crane lowered the weathered W, a few employees in the lobby clapped softly like a sigh released after years of held breath. From the 23rd floor balcony, Amara watched as workers hoisted up the new sign, Sterling, Errol Medical. The hyphen was a thread of suture across history's wound. Sterling what she had brought, Errol what had been buried, now pulled into light. Beside her stood Dr. Patricia Kim, hands folded behind her back, her eyes seasoned by winters in medicine. "Are you certain about this name?" Dr. Kim asked, not opposing, but testing the steel of Amara's resolve. To invoke Elizabeth openly is to call down a storm. "The storm is already here," Amara answered. "We are only naming it correctly." The elevator opened. Clara hurried out, laptop in one hand, half-eaten sandwich in the other. "It's live," she panted. "Costs and care page. 20 essential drugs with production cost, logistics, tax, and margin everything on one plain page." Old PR would faint. "The hotline?" Amara asked. 3 languages, English, Yoruba, Urdu. "Tonight, we add Vietnamese and Somali. 10 volunteers signed on. Half are community nurses, half are former patients." Amara nodded. No one understands a patient's voice better than another patient. They entered the internal auditorium. Over 200 staff packed the seats, lab coats, engineers, former cocktail, party faces all confronted with something champagne never promised: change. Under the white lights, Amara stepped onto the stage with no notes or a teleprompter. "I won't be long," she began. "Today we clean house. Tomorrow we open the doors. From now on, 2 things are fixed. Every week, 1 transparency report and 1 visit to the poorest clinic within 10 miles. If you disagree, today is the day to resign with full severance. No anger. Just a choice." At the back, a grey-haired man, Mitchell, head of marketing, stood. "With respect, Miss Sterling, this company survives on market share. Marketing is the heartbeat. Cut it, and we bleed." Amara met his eyes. A heart that beats without carrying blood to patients is only noise. Her voice dropped calm, sharp. "Not £1 will go to posters of smiling patients to sell overpriced pills. That money will buy actual medicine, deliverable to neighborhoods we once touched only with billboards." Mitchell pressed his lips shut. Amara clicked the remote. A screen lit up. The 7 commitments. She read them slowly. At line, 4. Ethics Council with patient members. She gestured to the front row. Elaine Sappho, type 1 diabetic, who once sued us over insulin prices. Please. A slight black woman in a purple cardigan rose, hands trembling faintly, but her voice was steady. I once hated the name Whitmore so much I could barely write it down. Today, I stand here because I want to try to believe again, believing that the insulin I inject daily isn't just a tile in someone's numbers game, believing my voice will go into minutes, not just tape. She turned to the employees. You fear losing money. I fear losing my legs, my sight, my friends. My fear has fed your profit long enough. From now on, it must feed decent decisions. Silence fell, like after a prayer, then a single clap, then another. Soon, the room thundered. Mitchell did not clap, but he did not look away again. Afterward, in the hall, Damien Cross appeared as if from the wall, grey suit, black tie, smiling like a man amused by earthquakes. He didn't enter the room. He didn't need to. Standing by the water cooler, he spoke just loud enough for Amara to hear and others to notice. Strong speech, he said. But Davidson doesn't stir for promises. He stirs for votes. Did you bring them? Amara asked. Damien raised a slim envelope. 12%. From pension funds, sick of lawsuits. They wanted stability. I gave them ethical stability, they laughed, until I showed them the graph of trust share in developing markets. I named the graph. You gave me the numbers. This afternoon, Davidson calls a strategy discussion, Amara said. Translation, soft coup. And you? Damien tilted his head. I call it an ethical restructure. Translation for shareholders. We still profit without killing anyone on the way. That afternoon, the Osler boardroom filled. Davidson presided at the head, blue tie, wrinkles powdered over. Flanking him were relic shareholders, men who once dined with Whitmore Sr., smoked cigars with Whitmore's father, and believed tradition excused paralysis. Ladies and gentlemen, Davidson began, voice low and syrupy, we are witnessing catastrophic shareholder value destruction. Stock down 90%. The press hails a saboteur as a hero. I propose a vote to suspend Miss Sterling's authority pending re-evaluation. Amara rose before he finished. You say, shareholder value. I say, patient value. The two are not enemies, but if we must choose, this company chooses the latter, and in time, the former will return stronger. Sentiment. Davidson sneered. No, Amara said. Numbers. She clicked the screen. Heat maps of Lagos vaccination rates after replacement batches. Prescription charts in London's poorest boroughs post price cuts. Litigation risk curves collapsing after voluntary disclosures. This is 18 months of revenue trajectory with bulk contracts governments sign because they trust us. This is PR cost zero because patients speak for us. This reduced the number of legal fires because we turned over the files ourselves. I don't beg goodwill. I present the mechanism, a hush. Then, unexpectedly, Mitchell stood. I opposed her yesterday. I withdraw it today. 3 NHS chiefs told me for the first time in 10 years they believe they can negotiate with us as people, not machines. At the far end, a platinum-haired trustee spoke. I've had hundreds of pensioners, nurses, teachers, drivers asking if their savings still fund a company that killed children. Now I can say, no. I vote for Miss Sterling. Davidson's jaw tightened. Then the doors opened. Margaret Whitmore entered, dressed in black, silver hair pinned neatly, with a folder in hand. Murmurs swept the room like wind through leaves. I will speak, she said, laying the folder on the table. I am Edward Whitmore's mother. I've been silent too long. These are the memoranda of Elizabeth Errol, my mother-in-law, whose name is now on our sign notes on ethical pricing, community clinics, and never profiting behind the poor's backs. I kept them for 40 years. Today I return them. Davidson paled. You are emotionalizing finance. No, Margaret said, eyes locked on Amara. I am clarifying origins. Saturday I vote for Amara. Not because she was my daughter-in-law, because she is the only one here who speaks the language Elizabeth wrote. The vote proceeded. Hands rose, pens signed. When tallied, Dr. Kim announced, retain current CEO 15 for 7 against. Davidson gripped his briefcase until his knuckles whitened. He packed without looking at Amara, as if her gaze might burn. Amara didn't open the champagne. She led the group to the basement lab, now rebuilt on Elizabeth's blueprints. Black and white photos framed the white walls. Elizabeth with children, chalking formulas, tending a tin-roof clinic in the rain. Out of place amid steel and glass, a wooden desk sat like a seed grain in the corner. From here, Amara said to Dr. Kim, we release old formulas that can cut costs open source, no patents. Anyone who can meet standards we send experts to teach. Dr. Kim studied her, gauging if this was fire or furnace. Then she nodded, lips pressed to hide a smile. Fine, but we'll make new enemies. Old ones aren't asleep, Amara replied. At least the new ones will have reason. That night, costs and care went live. Plain white, black text, no effects. The first line, a pill should never cost more than peace of mind. Below are the costs, logistics, tax, margin, and retail price tables. A button, report, unjustified discrepancy. Within an hour, thousands of views. The hotline volunteer recounted a man weeping. I thought my whole life was theft. Turns out, I just lacked a chart. Good news and bad news arrived like alternating dominoes. Good. Mirror recognized cooperation and reduced penalties. Bad. 17 pharma giants threatened to sue for market disruption. Good. NHS invited pilot contracts for fair-priced supply. Bad. Conservative shareholders sued for breach of fiduciary duty. Good. Lagos thanked them for the safe vaccines and listed the vaccinated children. Bad. A TV show screamed ethics queen ruins your pension, with a psychologist dissecting Amara's instability. At midnight, Amara laid the clippings like a chessboard. Clara muted the TV to follow the waves. Damien leaned by the window, silent. This lawsuit, Clara tapped the shareholder brief, is the sharpest. Fiduciary duty is their hammer. We use human duty as the hook, Amara said, and prove they pull the same way. Damien dropped an envelope. This is good news. They don't know. I bought Davidson's distressed debt this morning. He mortgaged his mansion to fund his fight. I own it now. No more blood. How? Clara gasped. Bank friends, Damien shrugged. And because for once I wanted to be faster than the dark. Amara met his eyes. You're shielding me. Why? Because if you fail, the industry will say, we tried ethics, it bankrupted. I can't stomach that, and because my sister, I told you. Silence comfortable, not tense. Clara broke it with 2 mugs of cocoa. No one saves the world hungry. The next morning, Amara, Dr. Kim, and the engineers flew to Lagos. On the plane, Amara read a letter from a London mother. My son is 7, with severe asthma. Yesterday we got the new priced inhaler. I cried at the pharmacy. Thank you for remembering we exist. She folded it into her pocket like a talisman. In Lagos, the public hospital was crowded but bright. Lines moved with surprising order. No red carpets, only a nurse shouting, "Sister," and children laughing as they clutched balloons with the new logo. A stylized rose with ECG veins, motto below medicine means mercy. For 2 hours, Amara administered shots herself not as CEO, but as a woman healed by touching without selling the touch. Back in London, the shareholder trial began. Cameras lined the court. Opposing counsel spoke of betrayal of fiduciary duty, immediate losses, and reckless conduct. Amara's lawyers countered with long-term value, risk mitigation, and market expansion. The pivot, an independent economic study showing sustainable profit through lower margins and higher volume, reinforced by trust. When the judge asked, "Why is transparency not commercial suicide?" Amara rose and answered, "Because secrecy is a wall for the powerful. Transparency is a bridge for the powerless. We chose the bridge and found more crossing it than breaking it. No verdict yet, but serious outlets shifted tone. Financial Times asked, is ethical margin the future moat? Not praise, not mockery, but authentic inquiry. That night, The Elizabeth lab produced its first batch of low-cost antibiotic white powder, used in petri dishes with a sharp chemical scent. Dr. Kim's eyes glowed. "If bioavailability holds," she said, "this batch could slash pneumonia treatment costs for an entire district. And if not?" Amara asked. "Then we try again, Doctor." Kim smiled wearily. "Science is trial. Ethics is not quitting." Meanwhile, Mitchell launched a new project. Instead of billboards, his team hosted 15-minute medicine at borough libraries, explaining insulin use simply, with doctors, nurses, and ex-patients present. Company posts showed only a whiteboard. "You have questions? We have time. Not viral, but the chairs are filled." One night, Amara received Sophia's message. "I've started nursing school. Today I practiced 4 injections. I was trembling, but I promise I won't hurt anyone again." A photo attached, gloved hands on a mannequin arm. Amara smiled. She replied, "Tremble, as long as you don't let go." Not all smiled. Some staff resigned in groups, uneasy with rejecting natural industry rules. Amara signed releases with thank you notes and job referrals. She wouldn't bind them with philosophy when they needed paychecks. She'd ensure paychecks came from philosophy. On day 40, a package arrived. Inside, a cloth-bound notebook, edges frayed. On the first page, "To whoever continues my work, E.E." Below, a familiar slanting hand. "If they call you mad for choosing people over profit, remember, profit never visits the graves of the dead." Amara placed it in the lab's glass case beside a photo of Helena laughing. She suddenly longed to call home, hear her mother talk about tomatoes sprouting in the back garden, reminding her that all form begins with a buried seed. That night, the city lay down. Alone in her office, lamp glowing, rain ticking glass, Amara opened emails. NHS confirmed expansion if supply stayed 98% on time. MHRA sent new transparency guidelines based on the company's model. Lagos sent a video, a mother hugging her child before a hand, scrawled sign, "Thank you." Clara texted, "Downstairs. Instant noodles or sandwiches?" Amara typed back, "Noodles. Extra chili." She shut her laptop, donned her coat, and glanced again at the glass wall reflecting the new sign. Sterling, Errol Medical, a hyphen as thin as a thread. One day, perhaps no one would remember Whitmore, maybe not even Sterling. But if a child, anywhere, received a safe, cheap vaccine, and their mother didn't sell her wedding ring to buy it, that would be enough. The elevator hummed down like a lullaby. In the lobby, Clara shook a noodle cup, Damien skimmed the paper, and Dr. Kim chuckled at a colleague's pet photo. They looked up as Amara stepped out. There were no CEOs, investors, or scholars for a moment, just 4 people waiting to eat a late dinner together. Amara sat, peeled the lid, steam rising like thin mist. "Tomorrow?" Clara asked, blowing on noodles. "Tomorrow," Dr. Kim answered, "we announce free TB meds for 2 boroughs, sign medical school rotations at community clinics, and," she met Amara's eyes, "file witness protection for everyone who helped surface documents." Damien nodded. "Tomorrow, I plug another shareholder leak and pull the plug on that cheap talk show mic." Amara tasted the broth. She closed her eyes not from fatigue, but to preserve this simple warmth, soup's heat, small laughter, the presence of those beside her. These are things that no report measures, but without which every report is meaningless. "Tomorrow," she said, opening her eyes, "we clean house again, and open the doors again." Outside, the rain eased. London was no brighter, but lighter. On the tower's facade, the new sign dried, glinting under street lamps, like the eyes of someone who had finally stopped crying. Somewhere, investors were still fuming, lawyers were drafted, and pundits coined new ways to call her insane. She let them. They did their work. She did hers. She knew, kindness is no miracle. It is a schedule, and tomorrow's schedule was already full. Autumn settled over London with fog thick enough to swallow glass towers. When the underground doors slid open that morning, newspapers lay neatly on the seats. Global Pharma Alliance. Sues Sterling, Errol Medical for market disruption. The headline sprawled so large it eclipsed the image beneath. Amara read the article from her office window with a cup of Ethiopian tea. Down on the street, traffic flowed steadily, but in her mind, numbers assembled like marching battalions. 17 pharmaceutical giants, united in signature, filed at the International Commercial Court. This was no longer Davidson alone, nor Edward in madness. It was the entire system striking back. Clara entered, clutching her laptop tight. They've gone all in. 400 pages of indictment. They accuse us of weaponizing ethics to manipulate the market. Amara allowed herself a faint smile, curious. For decades they manipulated money, unchallenged. Now one transparent company is guilty of excessive transparency. Damien Cross followed, the black suit immaculate and the face unreadable. Don't underestimate them. They'll pour millions into lawyers, media, and even lobbying governments. They'll paint you as a fanatic, wrecking economies, jeopardizing pensions. This is the gamble they stake everything on to erase you. Amara turned, her gaze ablaze. Then we stake everything too, not to guard a throne, to keep a promise. That afternoon, Parliament summoned her to an emergency hearing. The chamber was full, corridors crammed with press. A silver-haired MP rose, voice sharp. "Miss Sterling, do you realize your company's actions may cost thousands of jobs, millions of pounds, and destabilize markets?" Amara stood no notes, no script. "I realize thousands of patients have already died from overpriced drugs. I realize children in Lagos were injected with contaminated vaccines produced by the very corporations represented here. And I realize no market is worth an innocent life. If you call that instability, remember, instability has long existed. You chose to close your eyes." The chamber buzzed, some MPs nodding, others scowling. Journalists scribbled furiously. Damien's lips twitched upward from the back. She hadn't lost this stage. That night, Davidson appeared on national television. In a grey suit and warm tone, he spoke. "I once trusted Amara Sterling, but she is no longer a symbol. She is a threat. If we allow one woman to dictate global drug prices, tomorrow not only patients, but our entire economy will collapse." Clara snapped off the screen, furious. "He turned your gender into a weapon. One woman dictating like you're some medieval witch." Arms folded, Amara replied calmly. "He forgets witches were women who healed with herbs and were burned for daring to know more than men." The next day, the trial opened. Plaintiffs arrived with 10 robed lawyers and mountains of binders. The defense, Sterling Errol Medical, brought only 4, Maya Desai, Hugo Lin, Aisha Mbai, and an independent economist. But they carried new weapons. Elizabeth Errol's journals, contaminated vaccine records, leaked emails proving collusion to fix drug prices. When the judge asked if Amara wished to speak, she rose, her voice low but resonant. "They call this a gamble, it Ireland. But while they stake money, I stake human lives, and I believe justice will never let blood-stained cards win." The courtroom held its breath. The judge's gavel struck. The hearing continues, but today's statement is entered into the record. Amara found a sealed envelope on the table in her penthouse that evening. Outside, only 2 letters. J.E. inside, a shaky hand had written, "Be careful. Davidson is not only suing, he has bought someone close to you." Amara gripped the note, her brow tightening. Beyond the glass, thunder cracked, and lightning slashed the London night. She knew the gamble was not over. The final hand still hid knives. On the eve of the decisive trial, London wrapped itself in fog. The glass panes along the south bank blurred like someone had breathed across them. Warm lamplight fell over a table buried in documents on the 23rd floor. Amara Sterling leaned against the window, listening to the city like an organ at work. Steady, discreet, unfazed by the knives, just driven into it. Clara Bennett set down a grey file. "The indictment from the 17 corporations," she rasped, voice frayed by sleepless nights. "They demand an injunction against costs and care and all transparency programs. The charge, abusing moral position to manipulate the market." She smirked. "Would be a joke if it didn't come with 35 appendices. Amara shut her eyes for a single beat, then opened them, sharpened. Have we set the canary tokens? Yes. Clara slid 3 near-identical files across. 3 versions of our defense strategy, each with 1 different word, number, and comma. Each was sent to 1 person. If any version leaks by morning, we'll know who James meant by someone close to you. The anonymous letter, signed J.E., still lay in Amara's drawer like a splintered bone. Be careful. Davidson has bought someone besides you. James Errol, traitor turned reluctant whistleblower, was now a ghostly, unreliable source. It sounded like a cheap thriller plot, but reality often preferred tawdry scripts. Amara scanned the names. Mitchell, the marketer, now teaching medicine in 15 minutes. Dr. Kim, the ethical spine of the lab. Maya, Aisha, Hugo, the legal core. Damien Cross, the self-declared scalpel, not hammer. And Alistair Reed, the CFO, is as careful as an old abacus. Clara had sent the 3 versions to Mitchell, Alistair, and a legacy in-house lawyer, none to Damien. Because you don't want suspicion on the man who just bought Davidson's debt? Clara asked, not mocking. Because if he wants to play, he'll strike without needing our papers, Amara said. If not, no reason to teach him better. Near midnight, Damien appeared in the doorway, as though stepping straight from shadow into lamplight black suit, tie loosened, eyes awake. I just came back from a dreary dinner, he said, leaning against the table. 3 CEOs talking systemic risk, as though they didn't engineer it. You've slept? No. Amara stacked documents. I'll sleep once I know who sold me and for how much. He studied her. Silence stretched like cloth between them. I know about James's letter, he said. If you suspect me, ask outright. I suspect everyone, Amara replied. Not cold, just honest. And I design systems so when one falls, the rest stand. Damien's lips curved. You exhaust me with admiration. Don't. Amara switched off the lamp. Admiration is the worst catalyst for decisions. Tomorrow, no one misses a beat. Morning poured a cold silver light over the streets. An anonymous finance blog posted a leaked defense document from Sterling Errol Medical online. On the projector screen, one phrase glared wrong. Urban Trust Market 2, Roman numeral instead of numeral. Clara zoomed in. The version sent to Alistair, she said evenly. Amara summoned him. He entered green tie, dark circles under watchful eyes. What's so urgent? This. Amara set the printout before him. You leaked the only version you received. Maybe for money, maybe out of fear, maybe for love. His mouth opened, shut, creaked open again. My son, he whispered, eyes wincing like pressed wounds. He needs a liver transplant. Insurance refused. Davidson promised a private hospital, shorter queue, and money covered. He said, just 1 file, just to understand her angle, to protect the company. He swallowed. I was a fool. If you want to call the police. For a second, Amara saw not a betraying CFO but the Lagos mother clutching her child, Elaine on the town hall stage, herself at 17 in Helena's kitchen, flour on her hands, hearing, people sell themselves for fear and love. The first you correct, the second you must understand. Clara, Amara said, steel in her voice, call Maya. Prepare a deposition. She turned to Alistair. You'll testify. Surrender every exchange with Davidson. Your son's file will go to 3 NHS units we support, regardless of condition. I help the patient, not the traitor. Refuse, and the law does the rest. Alistair collapsed into the chair, shoulders trembling. Silent tears fell. Thank you, he choked, metallic against the marble floor. Don't thank me, Amara said. Thank those you'll protect when you speak. When the door closed, Damien muttered darkly, Davidson buys men with illness, blood, soaked tactic. And the most common, Amara replied. Today, we'll teach the court that truth. The International Commercial Court was as cold as a glass desk. Plaintiffs lined one side, robes in a wall of black, flinging terms like weapons, price leadership, predatory transparency, ethical collusion. Maya Desai rose, slight yet taut as steel wire. We refute ethical collusion. Collusion is concealment to inflate. Transparency is exposure to correct. One is a handshake under the table. The other is an open window. Alistair testified next. His voice shook, but he recounted Davidson's promises, the email, the file transfer. Objection irrelevant. The judge banged her gavel. Relevant. It shows the mechanics of price fixing. Bribery through medical desperation. Aisha Mbe presented costs and care. On the screen, clean columns, production, logistics, tax, margin. Our aim is not price dumping, but blindness breaking. Patients negotiate as citizens, not hostages. Hugo Lynn submitted independent evidence, MHRA's recognition, NHS memoranda, and a health economics study projecting long-term gain. Then Damien spoke, not a lawyer, but an investor and survivor's brother. Trust is capital. These corporations depreciated it for decades. We reinvest. His voice stayed level as he recalled his sister nearly dying. But his line, "I will not watch another company profit from a child's missing insulin," hung like ice. Midday. The doors opened. Margaret Whitmore entered in black, walking as though carrying a name to the altar. She read from Elizabeth Errol's notebook, "The price of medicine must honor the sick as bread honors the hungry. If my son forgets, find a woman who remembers." No applause, no laughter, just a shift, like an underground current. When Amara faced cross-examination, the opposing lawyer sneered, "You're building a personal brand. Queen of ethics, profiting off patients under virtue's mask." Amara stepped forward. "I have a name, no crown. I profit by selling safe drugs at disclosed margins. If you call that exploitation, then we don't share a language. As for image, look at me. You'll see patients reflected, nurses, doctors, and grieving mothers. I am a mirror." By afternoon, the judge ruled, no injunction. The court does not prohibit transparency. The court encourages it, then dropping stone into pond, and refers the plaintiffs to antitrust authorities for price fixing investigation. The opposing bench froze. Pens dropped. Clara gripped Amara's hand. Damien's gaze was a door opening. That night, in Sterling, Errol's courtyard, roses were planted. Each bush was marked with a card: nurses, community doctors, mothers, and a black stone bowl held sterilized ash from Whitmore's demolished lab. Elaine Sappho spoke first, voice trembling, recounting insulin ration nights. "I am not patience as a block. I am one person. Systems must let people stand upright, not crawl for medicine." Dr. Elias Monroe spoke of infrastructure of truth. A young Lagos doctor appeared on screen, thanking them for vaccines and saying fear in mothers' eyes was fading. Margaret read, "If they call you mad for choosing people over profit, remember, profit never visits graves." Amara stepped down the stairs, but there was no paper or podium. "I am sorry," she began. "Sorry, we came late. Sorry, people died. And I promise no with flash, but with calendar." She scattered ash at the first rose. Adana Okoye, mother. Others followed: Damien, Mitchell, Clara, ashes on soil, names in place. From ash, roses. She announced the Roses and Ashes Fund, legal aid for whistleblowers, emergency care for families, and job transition for the punished. So no one sells themselves out of fear when loving someone who needs medicine. Days later, Davidson was arrested not for speeches, but for transfers, bribes, false riots, and witness tampering. James Errol's prison tapes exposed his boasts of buying a CFO with his son's liverbed, evil mistaken for ordinary. The shareholder lawsuit collapsed. The judge dismissed. Fiduciary duty is not tomorrow's stock price, but 5 years' survival and reputation. Transparency is prudent risk mitigation. The financial press wrote, "The new moat may be ethics built not by walls, but by bridges." Contracts expanded to the NHS, Lagos, and Dhaka. Elizabeth's lab ran its second antibiotic batch, which was stable. Mitchell's workshops overflowed. Elaine joined the Ethics Council. One evening, Amara received a letter. The handwriting, "Edward, I do not ask forgiveness. Only this: when permitted public labor, may I serve in a clinic under Elizabeth's name, sweeping floors, setting chairs? Don't reply. I will understand silence. She didn't reply, but she registered him for community labor at the new Elizabeth Clinic in the old Whitmore estate. Margaret's gift. No press, no hierarchy. Gloves equalize. Damien said that night on the rooftop. 3 giants withdrew suit. 4 prepare patent traps. Politics, you know. I know. And the good news? Every strike against you now costs the public trust. That trust yields interest. He paused. One more thing. I love you. Amara didn't flinch. You love a system that runs without you. I love a man who understands that. They laughed, not fairy tale lovers, but allies unafraid of truth. Beneath, roses trembled in the wind. Ash dissolved into the earth. A schoolgirl traced a name on the memorial wall, whispering in a tongue the glass towers hadn't yet learned. Epilogue. The season of roses. 15 years later. Spring. 15 years on. The Whitmore estate garden bloomed into a sea of roses, red, white, pink, gold. Each flower, a living memory, sprang from Ash. Silver in her hair, Amara Sterling sat outside the Elizabeth Community Clinic, listening to children's laughter, leaves rustling, and training sessions with young doctors. No paparazzi, no threats, just the work of humming a humanitarian machine. The wall of names had grown victims worldwide honored. Beside it, a new fence bore the names of those saved by affordable medicine. Proof is not as theory but as breath. Clara, now Global Transparency Director, rushed up. News from Nairobi. Infant pneumonia deaths are down 62% with our antibiotic. They call it the Amara miracle. Amara smiled. No miracle. Just right medicine, right hands. Damien joined. Hair salted, still steady. They were no longer wary allies nor dramatic lovers, just kindred. Tomorrow, he said, WHO wants our model worldwide. Tomorrow, next year, 10 years, Amara murmured. As long as patience, fear, and ashes exist, we plant roses. A child brought her a rose. She inhaled, a memory of Helena's kitchen. She whispered, now, we have not only begun the season, we have kept it. Sunset poured gold. The garden glowed. And on the first wooden plaque still standing, ashes are not an end. They are soil for the next season of roses.